This conference will now be recorded.
So hope you guys are able to see the screen. So in the previous sessions, we discussed about the demo of the LoadRunner tool and the course. We discussed about types of performance testing, and we also discussed about some concepts like what is a server, what is app server, what is database server, and also what is protocol and what is failover testing and all that stuff. So in today's session, we will discuss something called performance test questionnaire, okay, which is actually a part of requirements gathering. So generally, if you are assigned to any testing project, any performance testing project, how do you start your work? Okay, so let's say you are a new team member and you are assigned some application for performance testing. So how do you start? What do you do first thing? Okay, the first thing is you have to get some information from the application team. You have to get some information from the application team, like not only the application team. In fact, you can add a business analyst also to that meeting. So first thing is you have to schedule a meeting with the application team and the business analyst, okay, or both, and then get the information by asking or by giving some walkthrough of the questions that you have, and then they need to provide answers for those, and then based on those answers you can start your further work assignments, okay, further testing assignments. Now when you schedule a meeting with them, you will have to ask some questions, right? So some of the questions what you can ask is what I have mentioned here in this document. I will share this document, okay. um, so you can go through this document later on as well. One second. Okay. So you can go through this document later on as well. So when the first thing that we discuss with the application team as part of this performance test questionnaire is, in general, first thing is what is the application name that you are going to test and what is its description at a high level, and then what is the test objective, what are they expecting from us, and then if there are any document relation SharePoint links or any links, any documents link that they can provide those, so that you can go through those and understand the application. And then you need to ask some questions like who is the product owner, who are the managers, like who is the development point of contact, who is the scrum master, if any, like you should update like performance tester. You can add this on your own, by the way. You can add this on your own. You can get the business analyst details also and you can update it. Some of the details in this section you can update on your own. Some of the details you can get it. Okay. Then the third important, this is important one, uh, environment or architecture details. So in the environment or architecture details, you will ask some questions like, hey, may I know what is the environment that I need to test? What is the environment that I have to use for performance testing? So they can give you any environment like SIT, UAT, performance testing environment. Okay. So basically, let's say our application is this one, www.Isha Training Solutions.com is the application URL, production one. Okay. This is the production URL or environment. Okay. Production URL or environment. So you will have another environments, what we call test environments, okay, or dev environments, something like this. So you can have like some environments like this as well. Okay, this will be a test environment or a test URL. Okay, and you can also have a dedicated environment like for performance testing. Okay, so we do all the testing either in this environment or this environment. Okay, so this is a dedicated performance test environment. Okay, so what I mean to say is, whenever you have to run a performance test or execute a performance test, where exactly you will run? What is the URL? What is the application URL that you use? That should be either this or this. Okay, so you cannot directly run on production. Okay, so you have to run, I mean, except in worst cases, that is very, very rare. In fact, if you ask me, sir, when did you run in production? I didn't execute anything in production so far in all my experience. So I've mostly executed in performance testing environment, which is a more dedicated environment for performance testing. That means no other teams or nobody else will be testing our application here. In this environment, this will be mostly a shared environment. The manual testing team or the functional testing team or the automation team will also use the environment in parallel with us. Okay, so if the thing why we are asking this question to them is, so if we have a dedicated environment, no need to worry. You can run your performance test whenever you want. But if you are asked to run a load test or any type of performance test in this environment, you have to make sure that nobody else is testing, okay, along with you. That means you run a load test, and automation team also are testing some regression scripts in parallel. And then what does that mean? It means that they are unnecessarily adding more load along with our testing scenarios. Okay, so when we are testing, nobody else should test it. Okay, so that's the reason when you are testing in this environment, okay, your client did not give a dedicated environment like this. Your client asked to do your client asked to use a shared environment like this. Okay, then make sure to send an email to everyone that, hey, today 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. I am going to run a load test. Please make sure that no other testing activities will be performed, okay, during that period. Okay, so like this you have to send an email to them before itself. Why? Because that's a shared environment, anyone can use it. And if you are testing doing a load testing, and if someone else is using it, it might give you unexpected results also. That's the reason whenever you are testing in any shared environment, you should send an email before itself that I will be using this environment for performance testing for so and so time period. Please do not perform any other testing activities. That's what you have to send an email. Everyone understood? We have to test either here or here, depending on what the managers or what the team has decided. Any questions still here? Everyone clear?
Uh, Krushik, UAT also we can test, right?
It depends. I mean, yeah, you can, but see, it's not like you can test it in any environment. So there can be UAT also like this, but
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that uh, UAT will not be used by others, or it obviously it will be shared environment sometimes. Okay, so
No, in my company, right, they are giving for performance as UAT. It's
that's
dedicated.
fine. That's what I'm saying. So that's what I'm saying. You have to check with your team what they are suggesting us to use for performance testing. In some
Okay.
companies, they have dedicated environment like this. In some companies, they have a shared environment like this. Okay,
Okay.
and
Okay.
in some companies they don't use this, and they will have these two, and then they will say this is shared and this is dedicated. Okay, so
Okay.
you need to understand like which environment is supposed to use for performance testing. But only one important condition is whether you test here or here,
Okay.
the
Okay.
environment should match it to the production.
Oh,
Okay,
okay. Okay.
whether you
Got that.
test here or here, the architecture, the environment, the capacity, the configuration, whatever you call, that should match to production. Okay, so for
Okay. Okay.
example, let me show you one slide. So when I say your performance testing environment should match production, so see this slide. Okay, so if you see here, uh, this is production environment where we have one web server, load balancer, two app servers, and one database server.
Yes, okay.
So in the performance testing environment, which is like a production environment, which is similar like production environment, or which is same as production environment in terms of configuration, should also have two app servers and one database server. If this is 32 GB, this should also be 32 GB, like that. Okay, so
Oh,
only thing we
okay.
need to make sure is whatever the environment you are testing, that environment should be a replica of production. Okay, if it
Okay.
is not equal to production, then also we can test, but there will be some caveats that we need to mention. I will discuss that later. But at a very high level, just remember one point, that whichever environment you are using for performance testing, that environment
It should
configuration should
match.
be same as production.
Yeah, it should match with the production environment. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So so developer, or sorry, the application team will give you some input. They will update it here, or you can also update it here according to their input on call. Okay,
Okay.
and then that's what the next question. See, whatever the environment they are mentioning, is it a replica of production? Yes or no? So that you have to,
Yes.
they have to mention here whether it is yes or no. Like in terms of in terms of CPUs, RAM capacity, like if it's 16 GB RAM, here also it should be 16 GB RAM, like that. Okay, and
Okay.
then
Got it.
any pre or post work required for that application to do a performance test. We are asking them any pre or post work required. If they know something, they can provide. And we are asking to provide some architecture details, like what type of web server they are using in the architecture, what type of app server they are using in the architecture, what is the database server, which load balancer they are using, and all that stuff. And then we are asking any architecture diagram, if any, just we are asking them to provide the architecture diagram as well. Okay, so very important. These questions needs to be addressed. And then you have some questions related to the application technology. So we are asking the application team which technology was used for for building the application, like Java, .NET, okay, whatever the application is there, that application technology we are asking. And then we are also asking if they have decided to use any specific protocol as per the application requirement. What protocol is used or supported for this application, we are asking them. If there are any database details like Oracle, SQL Server and all, any third party components, any third party tools they are accessing or taking support of, that also we need to make a note. If there are any JMS or message queues, so like if you're testing queues, okay, like JMS for Java messaging service, so basically JMS will be used to send messages to queues, okay, directly. If there are any specific queues they are using, we good to have some information on that also. Okay, so good to have that information on that also. Okay, so this you can get this information as well. And then uh, next comes to the application details, where we are asking what are the critical scenarios that I have to test. Okay, so for every application there will be a critical scenario and a non-critical scenario. So as a performance tester, our first priority should be a critical scenario. Okay, uh, so so let's take any banking application. So what are critical scenarios? Critical scenarios are transferring money from one account to another account, paying credit card bill, download bank statement. All these are critical scenarios. What are non-critical scenarios? Non-critical scenarios are like changing the user ID password of that user. Okay, click on let's say verify redeem points functionality. Okay, so basically we don't redeem the bank account points every day or every day, right? So we redeem once in 6 months or once in 3 months or once in a year, depending on how the usage is. So that is not that much critical. So so we have to ask the application team what are the critical scenarios. Can you tell us, we so and give us a walkthrough so that we can do some performance testing on that. Then workload volume details. In the workload volume details,
Question. Can I have one doubt?
yeah, yeah.
If the application team doesn't know the performance testing, right? Then how we can able to create the scenarios?
See,
We can,
we are asking. y- I think you got confused with the topic. So we are asking what are the critical scenarios from business perspective, not from performance. For business, that's the reason we are including business analyst also in this call. So we are asking from business perspective, what are important scenarios for you? Okay, so they don't need to have knowledge on performance testing to answer this question. Okay, so they need to
Okay.
tell what are the critical scenarios from business perspective. They don't need to know, they don't need to have any information about performance testing as of now. Okay, normal things.
Okay.
If you, let's say you are testing some e-commerce application. Now in general, what are critical scenarios?
Order.
Purchasing a product, canceling a product, modifying the product details, okay, modifying the order, okay, like that. So
Mhm.
those are critical, right? So
Okay.
now I'll answer your question. That is in a different context. Okay, the question which you asked is actually from a different context. We'll discuss that in some time. So
Okay.
in this question, we are just getting list of critical business scenarios. So as I said, performance testers mainly focus on critical scenarios. Okay, so that's
Mm.
what we are asking here. And then,
Okay.
okay, here we have one more question, like application test environment URL. So whatever the environment that we are going to test, we are asking the URL from them. Like what I mentioned here. So this kind of URL they will provide in whichever environment we test. That environment URL we are asking, and we are asking for some sample username and password, so that we can at least, as a performance tester, I want to just access the URL, log into the application, and see that look and feel of the application, and navigate between different pages and see how it is working. Okay, at a very high level. And then for performance testing perspective, if you need any specific user IDs and passwords, or specific number of user ID and passwords to log in, then who is going to create those for us? Is the application team going to create those credentials for us, lot many credentials for us, or are we going to should we create on our own, provided we have access to create? Otherwise you have to get it from the application team itself. Okay, so these four questions are also very important. Then any questions still here?
Sir, we are doing performance testing on APIs also.
So in 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 your application you need to ask them, you can ask the question. So see what happens is, um, some applications will be only API related, some applications will be UI related, some applications might have both. So you can ask that question also, like, in the list of critical scenarios, are we going to test the end-to-end scenarios on the UI, or are you going to give us any APIs for testing? So you can ask that question as well. Okay, so you can add that point if you want to. So actually when you ask critical scenarios, if it is an API related application, they will give you API scenarios only. Okay, if it's a UI based scenarios, they'll give you UI based scenarios. And then you have this workload volume details. So in this workload volume details, we are actually asking some important questions like, what is the user volume, okay, that we need to test at an application level? Okay, so at a scenario level, both basically. For the whole application, let's say transfer money, paying credit card bill, download statement. Let's say these are the three critical scenarios. Together, let's say 1,000 users. Out of 1,000 users, 500 are for transfer scenario, 250 are for paying credit card bill, 250 are for downloading bank statement, maybe, right? So you have to ask them what is the total user volume. Okay, and we are also asking them, is there any um, is there any current production volume? Okay, is there any current production volume that you have or referring to? Okay, you can ask that question as well. And then any test data, like how much test data we might need and all that stuff, it all depends on scenario, depends on volume. You have to actually uh, calculate this. Okay, mostly this will be our job only. What, how much, I mean, if there is any dependency on the data generation, then we can schedule a follow-up meeting with them and ask them like, how can we generate this data, or is someone else going to provide the test data, or we should create our own test data, is what we have to ask. Okay, and then some testing related details, like what are the different types of testing we need to perform, like load test, stress test, soak test, etc. And then testing timelines, by when we have to complete, when is the starting date for us, and by when we have to complete the performance testing for the release. And then any APM tools they are using, like AppDynamics, Dynatrace, Datadog, New Relic, like that. Any expected SLAs, like if they have any expected SLA means service level agreement. As I said, in as per the industry standard, 2 seconds response time is the SLA in general. But in some companies, depending on the architecture, they might be okay with 3 or 5 seconds also. That's the reason we are asking, is there any expected SLA? Okay, so the business team or they will guide us. And any existing production performance issues. So if you if if you are asking like, is there any existing performance issue in production? If it's an existing application, if it's a brand new application, you cannot ask this question. But if it's an existing application, you can ask this question. Okay, if it's a brand new application which is not yet in production, then you cannot ask that question. If it's an existing application which is there, like they already tested last year or the before last year, like that, then you can ask that question. Okay, so these are some of the important questions that you need to ask by scheduling the meeting. This should be the first meeting that you need to schedule with the application team and business analyst and the business team, and then ask all the questions whatever we discussed and get the answers from them. Okay, and by the time they give answers, see, sometimes what will happen, we will share this, we'll schedule a meeting, explain these questions to them and give this document to them, they will fill and give us. Sometimes when we are on call, the application team and the business team will directly give answers to them there, it's in the call itself, so you need to fill up on your own. When they tell the answers, you can fill up on your own. But in some cases or majority of the cases, they will take 1 2 days and they will get back to us by filling the answers for these questions. You need to share this document with them, they will fill the answers and give it back to you. Okay, and also once they give the document to you, then probably you can start working on how many scripts are there, how complex are there. You should schedule one more meeting with a manual tester or functional tester or a developer, just to walk through those, so that they will walk through those scenarios and explain you what is the flow. Okay, the UI flow, so that you can also perform the same actions while recording. Okay, so that's how you need to start your work. Any questions so far? And actually, this is one of the important interview question. Okay, especially a lead level or a manager level round, they will ask you this question for sure. Okay, that's the reason I added this question in the interview question document also. And whenever they ask this question, if you can tell some points like 8 to 10 points quickly without wasting time, then you're almost like 20-30% selected for the with this first question itself. So why I'm saying this is very important is, so performance testing role will have different work phases or activities in every project. So by answering this question, you will be giving confidence to the interviewer that you have already worked on various or all types or all the phases of performance testing lifecycle. See, your question might be something like this: what is the important information to be gathered from the application team or client or business analyst before you start working on any project? So if you can quickly answer some points like this, okay, and then there will be a lot of positive, impact on the from the interviewer. Okay, so any questions? So please go through all these questions, keep in mind and answer them quickly. Okay, any questions so far?
Sir, why this much of questions required, sir?
Then when you don't know anything about application, how will you test? You have to do the performance of the you have to do the performance testing. So when you want to do the performance testing, first you should know for which scenarios you need to do performance testing, by when you should complete the task. And so do you think that they will give like 2-3 months time for you to develop the scripting and execution and all? That's the reason we are asking how much time they will give us, what is the testing timelines. Okay, so based on that you need to complete your scripting, create scenarios and be ready with execution. Okay, and we have to run different types of tests. Okay, and we have to understand the architecture. If somewhere, if there is any performance issue while execution, you should know the architecture, then only you should be able to you will be able to identify the root cause. That's the reason you need to know all this information before you start working on any project.
Okay, they will give the deadline, sir. I mean, sir, within this time you have to develop the script, and within this time you have to
they
complete
will
the
they will
application.
not they will not give a deadline of script for scripting. They will tell us that um, the release date, they will give you release date. So basically in every project they will have if they are following some agile scrum methodology, let's say they will follow some 2 months release. So let's assume Jan and Feb is one release, March and April is one release, okay, May, June is one release, like this. So let's say we are here, let's say we are in the month of Jan. Now when you say when you ask testing timelines, they will say that, hey, my application, this release production deployment date is something like 24th February. What do you mean by production deployment date? Can anyone tell?
It's live.
Live. That means when the application is going live. So whatever the developers have developed in January and February, that will be given to the real users on February 24th. So if they give this sort of date, you should make sure that you are completing the performance testing at least 10 days before, at least 2 weeks before, by the way. But if there are strict timelines, at least 10 days before. But generally at least 2 weeks before you have to complete the performance testing. That means whatever you do, the developers or the application team, they are not worried about how much time you need for scripting, how much time you need to create scenarios and all that stuff. They will give you this date, and they will, so you are going to ask that question in the month of January. So this entire questionnaire document you have to discuss with them in the month of January, around January 15th or sometime, not immediately. Also, once the release is started, once they have some progress, once they give something to manual testing for testing purpose, then quickly schedule a call and ask them. So you might call them around January 15th or sometime, and then if they say they need some time, you can follow up and check with them by January 20. Okay, that means by end of January, third week or fourth week, you should know exactly what you have to do. Okay, how many scripts are there? What is that? How is the UI? How many data I need? How many users I need? Everything you should know by January ending. Let's say then February first week, you can quickly complete the scripting task. 1 week. Okay, then you will have second week and third week for execution purpose. Mostly second week for execution purpose. Okay, that's the reason I said you have to complete at least 10 days or 2 weeks before the live date, the production date. Okay, so that's how you need to plan your performance testing. Any other questions?
Sir, we are means we are mainly focusing on critical scenarios only, or they will tell us this kind of scenarios we have to focus on.
No, basically they will give us the performance testing scenarios what we have to test. Okay, but then if they are giving so many scenarios, we can just check with them, like, are these really critical? Because performance tester primary focus is to um, test the performance of critical scenarios. If all these are critical, then that's fine. But if you feel that any of them are not critical, then we will take critical ones for testing purpose. That's what you can tell. Mostly if there are 8 scenarios, 5 scenarios like that, you can take all of them and run, no problem. Okay, if there are 20, 30, then you can check with them, are those 20, 30 really needful? are all those important and critical for business? Like that, you need to check with them.
So how do you give an estimate for any scripting purpose, like scripting and end-to-end? Like sometimes they ask for the estimate, right? I know if it is agile, what if it is not an agile and they'll ask us an estimate? So how, on what base scenario we give an estimate?
Estimate will be given. See, okay, I'll tell you two things. Nowadays, we all are in the agile methodology only. Okay, so everyone has strict timelines. So mostly we don't have any option except to complete the scripting in 5 days or 7 days or 8 days max, like that. Okay, so if let's say there are 8 scripts, your worst case one script one day, 8 days enough, right? That's what I'm saying. So there are 10 scripts, one script in a day, you can complete that in a week, by the way. But if it is taking time, just take another 3-4 days. So scripting and execution, you can take, like, you can ask for uh, 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks minimum, depending on how many scripts. Let's say there are only 3-4 scripts. That's fine. You can ask 2 weeks scripting and execution. Okay. If there are more scripts, you can ask 3 weeks. So hey, I need 3 weeks at least to do the scripting and execution. So based on that, give me a timeline. Okay. So and you can pressurize on one thing in every case. So you have to tell is what you can tell them is upfront. If your live date is this, if the production live date is this, if we as a performance tester are expected to complete the performance testing at least 10 days before. Okay, let's say this is how we follow. That means by Feb 14th we need to complete the performance testing. So if you want to complete the testing by Feb 14th, you need to complete the development and give it to us by at least Feb 1st. Worst case. That means these 2 weeks I want to develop the script, create scenario and execute. Understood? Okay. Any questions? So because they also have development time very less only, because we are just in agile model, right? So we have 2 months release, means they will also have less time for development and all. They will also be occupied. It's like nowadays it's pretty common. Everyone are occupied in the agile cycle. Okay. So you'll have strict timelines most of the times.
Hello,
You can max take 2 weeks. Yeah. Yeah. Tell me.
sir. In between this time, we are finding the issues and telling to developer. No? Then they will also take the time, right?
That's
If
the
it goes
reason. That's the reason we have to complete the performance testing at least 10 to 14 days before.
okay
Okay.
for this
Yeah.
only, you're telling
Yeah.
10 days
Yeah.
before.
If they have some issues,
Oh,
if they can fix it in 1-2 days, they will fix it in here itself. And then again, you will run
okay.
one more test in this timelines only, just for confirmation.
Okay.
Okay. Your scrum master will guide you, or your manager will guide you, or your lead will guide you. Okay. So just follow the process what they are doing. Okay. I'll tell you in detail later on, but just try to understand for at least for today. Just try to understand like what are the questions that we are asking, but how it will work and what we have to do and all that stuff. I'll tell you some scenarios later on. Once we master scripting, I'll tell you. Okay. So any questions
Oh,
in
okay,
this
sir.
document? Okay. So
One doubt, sir.
yeah,
Actually, in the SIT environment, mainly the manual testers will be working and automation testers also working, right?
correct.
In the SIT environment, mainly uh, developers also, I mean, sometimes they are adding the scripts, right? Adding the modules, fixing the issues and adding their modules, right? If the manual tester finding so many issues and fixing the modules,
Hmm.
fixing that issues, and then if you are running the performance testing scripts,
Hmm.
then it will not execute, right?
Yeah,
It
so
will
that's
not
what I'm
execute.
saying. So if you want to run the performance test, it should be stable. Environment should be stable. That means manual testing should be completed. Okay. So that's the
Mm.
reason I mentioned like, uh, okay. So I mean, you have a lot of questions here. I mean, I don't know, like, I want to explain it later because most of you will get confused. Okay. So I want
Okay.
to explain as it as a release by. So let's say in Jan to Feb, what developer will do, what manual tester will do, what performance tester will do. I'll tell you clearly. Okay. But just understand that, just remember as of now, remember one point that we need to complete the performance testing at least 10 days before. Okay. If it's a 2 month cycle,
Okay.
at least 10 days before we need to complete. If there are performance issues, what they will do, if developer can fix it, they will fix it immediately. Otherwise, they will move it to the next release. That means they know that there are some performance issues, but still we will leave it to client. Okay, whether client wants to deploy it and give it to the real users with those performance issues, or they want to
Mm.
fix it. Okay, so agile means completely tailored for client. Okay, so they can change the date also. So let's say you identified, okay, so let's say you completed performance testing on 14th and you identified one performance issue. Okay, no, developer said I need like 1 week time for fixing it. Okay.
Mm.
No, what no client will decide. Okay, and manager will decide. Okay, our date is 24. We completed performance testing on 14th and some issues. Now developer is saying I need 1 more week. That means like till 21st. Okay. And then after
Mm.
fixing this, okay, after fixing this on before 21st, of what we have to do, we have to run one more round of performance test. That means we need another 2 3 days, 1 or 2 days at least. Okay, so
Okay.
in this case what is happening, we are approaching the live date, right? Well, we are not able to complete entire
Mm.
performance testing and give sign off from our team on before 24th. So in this case, what client will think is it really really a very very major performance issue? If yes, client will move this date to, let's say, March 1st. Okay, if
Okay.
it is a really major performance issue, client will move this to March 1st. If it is a normal performance issue, if client is okay with that, then client will say that okay, no problem, let it be. uh, Even though there is a performance issue, let's move it to production. We will see that issue in this release. So in this release, developer will fix it and we will test it here in this cycle, in this month, March or April. Okay, so you understood. So depending on the severity of the performance issue, client will take a call whether to defer that release date or whether to move the release date to next month, or 1 week or 10 days, like this. Okay, so we'll discuss that further. I'll tell you in few more scenarios, like in real time, what are the different scenarios we'll have, in which scenario what we have to do. I'll tell you all those things later, but for time being, just understand that these are the questions we need to ask and get information from them. Okay, so I will share this document with you now. But remind me, once we master scripting and create scenarios and execute load test, just remind me. I will also make a note, but just remind me that I will tell you how the agile cycle works and what we have to do as a performance tester and all that stuff. In different scenarios, like if we find performance issue, what we have to do. If we don't find any performance issue, what we have to do. If we don't have time for scripting, what we have to do. Okay, if development team has done development very late, and they have delayed the development process and they gave it to performance testing uh, uh, you know very late. So how we should handle that scenarios. So what if the functional testing team said that functionality is not working? What is the impact on us? I'll tell you all those scenarios at the end, during when we discuss interview questions, right? I'll tell you all those things. Okay. For time being, just understand that these are the different questions we need to ask from the application team. So apart from the timelines, okay, apart from the timelines, performance issues identified, and all that stuff. Any other questions with this documentation? Any other questions that you need, that you want to ask? Okay. Okay, I'll take that as no. Let's move to the next concept. So the next concept here is, in this workload volume details, I mentioned total concurrent users, right? That means we are asking the client or the application team or the business analyst, what is the total number of users that I have to use for testing? Okay, so in this context, we have three different scenarios. Okay, so we should always think from a perspective assuming that our client doesn't know anything about performance testing. Okay, so deciding the user volume, when client doesn't know anything about performance testing. Everyone understood this point? Deciding the user volume when client doesn't know anything about performance testing. That means normally I said we have to ask like with how many users I have to test. Now, if client is saying that client doesn't know anything about it, I cannot give you this number. I cannot give you this number. I cannot give you the volume also. Okay, because I don't know anything about performance testing. I don't know anything about performance testing. Then what we have to do in this case? Anyone? Now, ideally, client should give us what is the total users we have to test and all that stuff. Let's assume that client is not aware of anything and client is not giving any data to us. So in this case, there are three
You
scenarios.
run a baseline test.
You no see, that is for response times. Okay, see, baseline test you run to identify some response times, like how the application is performing. If client is not giving you SLAs, okay, so here somewhere I have mentioned SLAs, right? So if client is not giving you that SLA, then you can ask, you can run some baseline test and then you can decide like what is the response times we are getting. We can use those baselines and all. For users also, we need to have some information, at least little bit of information we need to have. So here, let's say there is a scenario one. Okay, if the application is already in production, if the application is already in production, okay, one second. If the application is already in production and client doesn't know anything about performance testing, if the application is already in production and client doesn't know anything about performance testing, then in this case, how are we supposed to get the user volume? So when I say application is already in production, what do you mean by this? Anyone?
Already that application is used by the users.
Correct. Let's say
It
that
is in live.
application is already in use since 2022. It's already in use. Okay, real-time users are using that application. It's already there. Now you join this team. Now you have to do performance testing for this. Now client said that he doesn't know anything about performance testing. I cannot answer this. Now what you can do in this case is, okay, you can
Hello.
use, yeah, someone is asking something. Okay, no questions, right? Okay. Okay, one second. Okay, so if the application is already in production and client doesn't know anything about performance testing, so in this case, what you can do is you can get historical data information. You can get historical data information like in the last 6 months or 1 year, how many users accessed the application? How, how many page views are there? Okay, which page was mostly accessed, etc. Okay, something like that. You need to get some information based on historical data, based on the past statistics. How do you get this information? How do you get the historical data information? So you can use by using some data analytical tools like Splunk, or you can use SQL database also. Okay, you can access database and you can see how many users and all. They will have some information stored in the database, or you can use some tools like Splunk and all, and then you can get the information like, hey, in the last 6 months, okay, during which month, during which day, and what time of the day more number of people access the application is what you need to get, and take that as an input for our performance testing. Okay, so if you don't have access to the production databases and all to get the historical data, just reach out to developer and say that, hey, I need some information for the can you get it for me, the historical data? Like, I need to know how many users access the application in the last 6 months in production. Okay, and in the 6 months, which day, which month, which day has more number of users, and that more number of users, that specific day, more number of users, right? That number you have to take as input. Okay, so let's say today is February, right? This month is February. So let's say in the last 6 months means, let's say till September or August. So in the last 6 months, let's say in the month of November 15th, let's say more number of users accessed, let's say some 3000. That maximum number is what you have to take as input for your load test. Any questions? They will provide you. Okay, if you don't have access to databases and all, or if you don't have access to any data analytical tools like Splunk and all, you can reach out to developer. They will provide you that information. Okay, no, if the application is brand new, if the application is not new, okay, and client doesn't know anything about performance testing, what do they do in this case? Any guess? If the application is new and I want to know the user volume and all that stuff, page views and all that stuff, how can I get that? So in this case, they will use, okay, in this case, you need to reach out to the application team and the business analyst or the client. What they will do is, because the application is new, the business team, what they will do is, they will get the data based on competitor statistics. Competitor statistics. So what do you mean by competitor statistics? So let's say you are starting a new bank. It's a new application. You don't have any users now, as of now, in real time. In production, you don't have any users. Then you think like how your competitors are doing and get some metrics, and then take as input and start working on it. But how will you get the competitor statistics? So there are some network utility tools and some uh, apps which provide this information for us. Okay, but it is like a uh, priced package kind of thing. I think they need to pay, and that organization will work something like to get some network. They will do some network analysis, network traffic analysis, and they will get you some information. So, for example, there is some uh, application like this. Okay, so let's say this is, I'm just taking one sample application. Uh, Sample application in sense, for sample purpose, I'm just telling you this example for your understanding. Okay, so let's say this tool or this application is there in the market to compare competitor statistics and give the metrics based on the requirement. Okay, but they will charge, I guess. That's the reason you have pricing option here. Okay, so now let's say what information it is giving at a high level. See here, one second. Okay, so here, let's say I just selected news and media publisher and country as United States, and it is saying that these are the competitors, top competitors. Like MSN.com has like 565 million visits for that website. Okay, Fox News, CNN.com, New York Times.com, Yahoo.com, like that. Okay, for example, if I change it to some finance, finance. Okay, so here you have city.com, Capital One, Intuit, Chase, JP Morgan Chase, PayPal.com, like this. Okay, for example, I'll change the country. I'll change it to, let's say, India. Okay, if I change it to India, see the comparison like xness.com, zerodha.com, hdfcbank.com, moneycontrol.com, economictimes.com, like that. It is giving you some statistics. Okay, high level statistics. If you want in detail statistics, you have to reach out to them and take a package pricing and all that stuff. And if you go with e-commerce shopping, okay, let's say e-commerce shopping in India like amazon.com, meesho.com, indiamart.com, flipkart.com, amazon.in. Okay, and if you go by news and media publishers, so yahoo.com, India Times, Aaj Tak, News 18, India.com, something like that. Okay, and travel and tourism like Trip Today, Trip Advisor, Indian Rail, Make My Trip, IRCTC, like this. So hope you got some clarity. So like that, they will get the data based on competitor statistics by using some network utility tools. Okay, any questions? So in this, for this question, performance tester role is very limited. Okay, performance tester role is very limited. So if your application is new, if client is not aware of performance testing, what can you do as a performance tester? You cannot do much, right? So because you will, let's say you are in India and you are supporting some project for Australia. So you don't know anything about competitors there and all that stuff. How will you decide what is the business for them and everything? So basically in practical, performance tester as a performance tester have very limited role to play in this kind of scenario. Only thing you need to do is you have to reach out to the business team and get that information for you. How they get that information, they do this process. Okay, any questions? This is scenario 2. Hope you are understanding. Okay, then scenario 3. Okay, let me write by using network utility tools. Okay, then scenario 3. In this scenario 3, application is new and client doesn't know anything about performance testing and no competitor. Okay, and no competitor. Here there is no competitor also. Then how can they use network traffic utility tools and get the information for you? So in this case, what they generally do is business team. Again, you have to reach out to business team because you as a performance tester role is very limited. So you have to reach out to business team. What they do generally do is they understand the core business. Okay, how the things are happening in real time. I'll tell you one example. For example, you are starting a food delivery app for the first time. Let's say there is no competitor. You are the first one who is doing it. Okay. Now, when you don't have a competitor, how will you know how many people will buy or how many people will log into my application and buy food online? You don't know, right? So that's the reason they try to analyze the core business. Let's say in the core business, per day, per day, let's say, uh, like 100K means like let's say 100K. 100K users are going to the nearby food delivery stores and purchasing the food directly. Directly, they are going to the nearby food delivery stores and purchasing the food. Now, that is a core business. Out of that 100K, how many of them might switch to online? Okay, is what they have to think and let us know. They might think that, hey, so okay, 25 to 40% or 25 to 50% of the users might switch to online, and they can buy food online through our app. If this is your assumption or expectation, then you have to take that into count like that. Okay, so again, a performance tester role is very limited. Business team will have to decide and give the information to you here also. Any questions? So in scenario 2 and scenario 3, the role of performance tester is very limited. Okay, scenario 1, you can handle on your own. If you have access to database, you can also go to database query. If you have access to Splunk, go to Splunk and query. But these two cases, you can, if they ask you an interview, like in these two cases, what will you do? You have to tell that I will be scheduling a meeting with the business teams, and we will be discussing on what is the number of users or volume that we need to test. They might be getting the information from there, from the network traffic utilities or some core business, and the analysis will be done and they will be giving the number to us. Okay, that's what you can tell. If you say that for this scenario, I only did everything, I only understood the business, I only understood the core business and everything, they will not believe. Because let's say you are sitting in India and you are doing Australia project, how will you know the core business in Australia, right? It's not possible, right? So you cannot take those key decisions. The business have to take those key decisions. Only thing is, you can reach out to business team and try to get as much as information as you can. You can simply reach out to business analyst. They will probably, or the product owner, PO, or the product owner, they will get this information for you. Okay, that's what I mentioned in this document also. If you scroll down, very, very important interview question. How do you gather information regarding target volumes to be achieved if your client doesn't know anything about performance testing? Okay, and then I wrote scenario 1, scenario 2, scenario 3, and then I wrote a follow-up question also, possible follow-up question in the interview. Have you ever gathered data for scenario 3? No, there was an application for which client didn't provide any data. However, I have discussed with the business analyst and application team to finalize the target volumes. Okay, you can simply say like that. Reaching out to client was not possible directly in our project. So we have reached out to business analyst and they have discussed with the core business teams, on-site business teams, and they have given the data to us. That's what you can tell. Okay, as a performance tester, your role is very limited. That's what I mean to say. Everyone understood? Okay, very, very important from
Hello.
interview point of view. Yeah.
Sir, in the scenario one, I mean, the developer will give the queries to get the data,
Yeah, you can.
or
Yeah, yeah.
directly will give the volume.
Anything. You can ask queries or you can ask volume also. I prefer to ask queries because if I have query, I can only run and see every 3 months or 6 months. I will not go to developer again and again, right? So if they are giving query, you can only run and check. If they are not giving query, you can just get the volumes. Okay. Every
And
release,
this
every
volume
release you can get the volumes.
is considered for the load test, sir.
Correct. Correct. For the load
Okay.
test. Yes. Okay. So I will wrap this session for today. So if you have any further questions, right, do let me know. Yeah, yeah, Sanvi, we will share this documentation. Yeah, I'll share these running notes also for you. Yeah, I mean that's the reason I added every concept interview question. I've added interview questions, possible interview questions. I've added in detail, question and answer both. Okay, so it will be easy for you to go through later on. And it is a most frequently asked interview question. Whatever we discussed today. Okay, it's that important. Okay, let's meet again tomorrow if you don't have any questions.